Welcome back to the Rock at Home video series. Last time, we reviewed the topology of a typical home network and the basic hardware requirements to get a Rock sensor built on a shoestring budget. In this second video, we're going to walk through getting and applying the ISO, installation, configuration, and deployment. It's important to note upfront that RockNSM has been designed to be used as a Linux distribution. It's not a package or a suite of tools. It's purpose-built from the ground up. So the only supported method of installation is by using the ISO. You can get the image file and corresponding checksum by heading to download.rocknsm.io. As you can see, I've already downloaded the ISO here to my desktop. There are several good applications out there to create bootable media, but I wanted to specifically mention Etcher. It's a cross-platform solution and we've had great success with it. You can also get into the command line to do this. So if you're comfortable working in the terminal, you can use DD to apply the image. And please take caution when you're using these commands and writing to disks by ensuring that you've selected the right disk and partitions. Once you've inserted the USB, we need to get the drive ID by using disk-util. So you can see here, /dev/disk2 is an external USB drive with a capacity of 4 gigs. That's the target disk I'm going to use to create a bootable Rock image. I need to next make sure that that disk is not mounted by doing a disk-util unmount disk, and then issuing a DD command. I'm going to specify a block size here, and the input file is the Rock ISO that I downloaded, and the output file is /dev/disk2. We're running this as sudo, so I'll enter my credentials and we're off. Let's walk through the installation steps for Rock. The rest of this demonstration is using VMware Fusion on a Mac. If you're not using a Mac, you can duplicate these steps easily by using VirtualBox. If you're following along in a VM, here's a quick breakdown of the settings that I'll be using. I've issued 2 CPU cores, 4 gigs of RAM, and I'm not going to ingest any data on this machine today. I'm just going to get it up and running, so 20 gigs should be more than enough for a disk. And it's important to note that I've got 2 NICs. It's best to have the network interface that you intend to use to connect to and manage Rock plugged into a network configured for DHCP. Once we're at the main menu, there are 2 basic options: automated and custom installation. The automated install makes a lot of the hard decisions for you and makes it easy to get up and running. The custom option uses the same settings as automated, but pauses at the Anaconda screen that will allow advanced users to customize things, especially how to configure local storage. So here we are at the user creation screen. I want to clarify some steps and encourage users to follow what we believe to be best practices when it comes to administrative users. We recommend that the root user is never directly used to interact with the machine, but rather create an account with administrator privileges. As you can see here, the root password is not set for the root account. Leave it this way to have the root account disabled. Click on Add User and be sure when you're editing these settings to check the box to make this user an administrator. Once the install process is complete, the machine will reboot, and finally you'll need to accept the license agreement. And the last step before configuring the sensor is to update the base OS up to current. After reboot, we're ready to review and tune the sensor's configuration. After SSHing into the machine, I'll show the network interfaces really quick to demonstrate what's going to happen. This machine has 2 interfaces with one of them active. The second entry, ENS33, has an IP address from DHCP, and that's what Rock is going to use as my management interface. And below that, you see number 3, the ENS34, is the interface that I added, but does not have anything plugged in. The primary configuration file for Rock is in /etc rocknsm config.yaml. This file contains key variables like network interface setup, how CPU cores are utilized, and more. All these options are commented in order to describe the function of each section, but here are some key points to note starting out. I mentioned that Rock takes the interface with a gateway and uses that as management. Here in line 7 and 8, Rock monifs is showing that third interface, ENS34, is what Rock sees as a monitor interface. We've taken into consideration that your sensor won't always have internet access, so the ISO's default value for line 30 is to have the online installation option set to false. If you install your sensor with internet access, you can set this to true, and it will reach out to the internet to get the latest repositories. You can easily point this to local mirrors as well. There are a lot more options to tune here, so take your time to familiarize, but make sure to check out the last two sections starting at line 65, where you can tune what components are installed and what components are enabled on boot. For instance, if collecting raw PCAP is too resource and storage intensive for you, you can set with stenographer and enable stenographer lines to false, and you can just focus on collecting network logs. So what happens when you've completely mucked things up in this config and need to get back to basics? We've got a script for that called generate defaults. It's located in /opt/RockNSM/rock/bin. This script will generate a fresh config for you and get you out of jail. Once your config file is tuned to suit your environment, it's finally time to deploy. This is done by running the Ansible deployment script located in opt/RockNSM/rock/bin. If everything is well, this should set up all the components you selected and give you a banner celebrating your success. The next video is going to go into how to do functions checks and operate and maintain the sensor, but we've got one more thing to cover in order to get to that sweet satisfaction that is Kibana. We strive to do the little things right, so rather than having Kibana available to the whole free world, it's sitting behind an Nginx reverse proxy. It's also secured by a passphrase. So how do we get to this thing? Easy. The credentials are generated and then stored in the home directory of the user you created during install. That wraps things up for video 2. Stay tuned for the conclusion of the series, where we'll get into operating and maintaining Rock. See you then.